quite a complete contrast to the other things we've talked about. It is a it's on Disney Plus, but it's apparently by National
National
Geographic,
Geographic, yeah.
who I didn't know they did drama, but this is like a a drama based on true events that they've sort of embellished a bit, I think. And basically, it's the story of Miep Gies. And now, Miep Gies, if you don't know the name, was a Austrian Dutch woman who helped the Frank family hide during the Second World War in Amsterdam. And most of us, have heard of Anne Frank and
Mm.
her diary. And
Yep.
this is a story of basically the events around that. So it's not about Anne Frank, it's about Miep and how she came to be in the position where she actually hid this family for 2.5 years. And so you start off just before the war when she was adopted by a Dutch family. She was an Austrian girl whose mother was a single mother who couldn't look after her. She was starving to death. And at that time in the 20s, when there was a huge depression across the world, a lot of Dutch families opened their homes to Austrian and German children. And she was adopted by a Dutch family along with another little German boy and was raised as a Dutch woman. And she has lived, so you see at the beginning of the story in the 1930s, she gets a job in a factory. Her parents say, it's time you found, you either get married or you get a job. And she gets a job in a factory which is owned by a man called Otto Frank. And he is a German who fled Germany in the early 30s when they started restricting the liberties of Jewish people in Germany. And he moved his family to the Netherlands because it was thought to be a safe place for Jews to go. So he has moved with his wife and his two children. Um, his wife, I think her name is Edith, or it might be Ethel, but I think it's Edith, and their two daughters, Anne and Margot. And they live a prosperous sort of middle class life. He runs a sexual factory, selling pectin, which is the gelling agent for jams. So that's what the
Okay.
factories just they sell pectin. And so this young woman, Meetpiki, she goes to work for them and becomes very close to the family. She becomes friends with the family, the girls. She sees them grow up, and before the war, you see her get married because she still has technically a German passport because Austria was annexed by Germany in the 30s.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She's told, you either have to marry a Dutchman or you have to go back to Germany. And so she actually marries her boyfriend, and then the two of them become huge, great friends with the Frank family. Then, as the war starts, nothing much changes in Amsterdam other than a few more restrictions. But then the Germans invade, and it becomes clear that the restrictions that were placed on the Jews in Germany are going to have to be placed on the Jews in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And Otto decides he says to me, we either have to leave or we have to go to hiding. And at that time, before the war, Jewish families were allowed to apply to go overseas if they were sponsored by someone. And the Frank family was sponsored by his brother in America, but their visas were denied by the German
Yeah.
over, powers that be. So he said, I think we have to hide. And so Meep and the three other people who work in there's four of them altogether who work in this factory, the non-Jewish staff basically create. The factory is built on several levels, and there's like a hidden annex, and they make a flat in this annex, and basically the Frank family move in there. And then later, another family who can't get out, they move in there as well. So there's the four Franks, and there's three Van Wyck family, and then another man joins them as their dentist. And so you have these 8 people suddenly living in this annex.
Yeah.
And me and the members of staff, the 2 men and the woman who work there as well, they basically go shopping every day, and they go to a different shop every day and buy no more than one bag full of shopping and bring it to them. They have made arrangements with a local baker, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, they supply and they support them for this 2.5 years.
Mm.
And it becomes something of almost like an open secret that people suspect that they might be hiding Jews, but they don't know for sure. But a lot of people nearby suspect that there might be a family there. And you see basically this whole story, we only see what Meep sees. So we
Yeah.
don't, if she's not there, we don't know what happens. So we don't know what happens. We don't see Anne writing her diary. We don't see Margot writing in her diary unless she's present when these things happen. So
Yeah.
we see the story played out outside of the annex, basically, and what life is like in Amsterdam, and how Meek and her husband get involved in the resistance,
Yeah.
hiding Jewish children, getting them adopted, um, doing small things and to help the thing. And then, as we know, the story of Anne Frank, they are betrayed and informed upon, and they're raided, and all of the people in the annex are arrested, and all of the people who are working in the factory are arrested as well. Meep is arrested, but the German soldier who arrests her is Austrian, and she says, "Oh, are you from Vienna?" Because I'm from Vienna, but I'm married to a Dutchman. And he starts talking and he says, "Even though you've harbored a Jew, I'm going to leave the room and I'm going to basically let you go."
Yeah.
And so that's the only reason why she's not imprisoned, but the others are imprisoned and
Mm.
sent to work camps, as well as the Frank family and the Van Wicks and the dentist Dieter. I can't remember his name. I'm sorry, but yes, so they are arrested, and then we know that after, um, before the annex, because what happened when the Jews were arrested in Amsterdam is the Germans, the Nazi Party, basically the National Socialist Party, would move in and they would strip their property. They would strip the flats. They take all their property, all their belongings, everything, books, jewelry, clothing, shoes, pictures on the wall. They would literally empty the flat out. And so before the people moved in to strip the annex, um, Meep and her husband and other people literally ran in there and gathered up as much as they could to save. And one of the items they found was Anne's diary and her notes and her sketches. And they never found Margot's diary, but they did manage to fight to get Anne's diary. And then she kept that diary for 2 years throughout the rest of the war until, um, it was, till the only person to survive was Otto Frank, and he
Yeah.
came back. And when it was confirmed that the girls had died, um, she then said, "Well, I was saving this for Anne, but as you've come back, and Anne, we know now that Anne has died. Here's her diary." And so she then Mietke kept it safe, and she gave it to Otto Frank, and then he decided in 1947, I believe, that it was too valuable not to share with the world, and
Yeah.
therefore we have the Diary of Anne Frank. So it's a story, yeah, seen through this lady's eyes. And then there's the meaning of the story is that a small light in a dark room can sort of give great comfort. There's a quote that is quite moving, but I can't remember exactly
Yeah.
without reading it. But it's
So the
about,
meaning of the title.
yeah, a small light.
So so could I just check? Have you just told us the story of the entire series?
Yeah.
but
More or less.
but I guess as far as you're concerned, it's history. Most people know this anyway.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you don't know the story of Anne Frank, then I don't think you'd have any interest in watching this program.
All right. So who do you think it's made for? Because I have to admit, when I saw this, and I was like, okay, it's interesting. It's got Bel Powley, who I love. I think Bel Powley is a brilliant
Yeah.
actress.
Lee Schreiber as Otto
Elif
Frank.
Schreiber, yeah, he's in
Always
there
good.
as well. I think these are all
Joe
good
Cole,
people.
who was from Peaky Blinders, yeah. So
Yep, Joe
good
Cole,
cast.
Peaky Blinders, Gangs of London, and these all people who I love, all people who I think who are good. But I was actually thinking about why would I watch this? It's yes. So
Yeah,
would you
that's a
address
good
that? Like,
question actually, because
why did you watch it? Why did you watch it?
it's one of those things you know how it ends. It's almost like I always think of like Romeo and Juliet. You know how it ends on the very first page.
Yeah,
So why would you still watch it? And I think it's that compelling of there's a certain the truth has a certain power to it. And I think to save I think and some stories deserve to be told and deserve to not be forgotten. And I think the story of Anne Frank and people like Meat Geese who were resisting the sort of the National Socialists, I think they deserve to be remembered, and I think that they should not be forgotten. And so for me, this story was reminding me of the tragedy of what happened to many people in Amsterdam. And if you're a Christian, I think most non-Christians know the name Anne Frank, and nearly every Christian will know the name Corrie Ten Boom,
yeah. Corey Ten
from The
Boom, yeah,
Hiding Place. And so they live in the same city, and their stories were similar in the fact that it's that the Corrie Ten Boom hid Jewish families, and she and her sister were arrested, and her father was arrested,
Yeah.
and her sister and her father died in captivity. And when she was released, and she went on to tell her story. Um, so it's a different story, but I just think this shouldn't be forgotten. But I found it compelling as a drama, and the fact that there is drama to it because these are like real people's lives. But I think when you write fiction to capture real emotion, and then so this is real because it actually happened. You don't have to make stuff up because
Yeah.
the truth is as powerful as anything that can be imagined, and
Yeah.
it can be. And there's more horror in truth than sometimes it can be imagined. If you'd told someone who's never heard of the Holocaust or the lots of events of the Second World War, if you told them about it, I don't know that they would always believe you.
Yeah.
And so I think in some ways you have to be reminded that this actually did happen in
Yeah.
Europe, in just across the sea from where we are now, and to people who were living ordinary lives. And these things, you know,
And when you look at the world, when you look at world situations nowadays, you look at the fact that it might be God knows how many years, 80 years or anything like that, but it doesn't. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen again
yeah,
because there's arguably people trying to do something very similar now.
yeah.
So
And
it's
one sort of woman who was not, she wasn't wealthy, she wasn't powerful, she wasn't an intellectual, she was nothing but someone who worked in an office. But she was what her small act of courage by just saying, yes, I'll hide you, and then yes, I'll keep this diary safe. Has left 80 and legacy that's lasted 80 years,
mm,
and that we still have Anne Frank's diary because of what she did.
well, yeah. I guess that's the point. The fact is that there might be people who might not have known it, even though the story has been told again and again and again. That it's worth always remembering because there might be people who don't know it, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Or
yeah.
who maybe believes that. But some people say, "Oh, it didn't really happen." It's like because you do hear people denying that these things happened, and it's like,
Humans can deny anything. That's,
yeah, and and
so one of the things I've found is that humans can lie about anything and they can deny anything. So
yeah,
it's
and I think again, like I've always gone on banged on about this. I won't bang on about too much, but sort of personal history. One of my uncles was at D-Day Plus, moved across Europe into the Low Countries, into the Netherlands, and he saw concentration camps. He he was one of the when the British Army when they worked through into the Netherlands and into Germany, they were the ones who liberated a lot of these places, like Bergen-Belsen, which is where my uncle saw, and
mm,
well, like what was left of Ravensbrück and Auschwitz and all these other, these places that have got we know as infamous and ghastly places. But these were an ordinary man from the Isle of Wight walked in and saw that horror,
yeah,
and we shouldn't forget that either.
yeah,
So yeah, we should. Yeah, this just I think it's worth remembering, and it's worth. But there's humour in this drama. There's compassion in it. There's a love story. It's much funnier than you expect. It's for a serious subject matter. It's handled with a light touch. So it's serious when it needs to be serious, but there's moments of joy and there's moments of humour, as you would expect. They're not made into plaster saints. You can see how Anne was joyful, naughty, funny, and a teenage girl who didn't always
mm.
get on with her mum, and her other sister was like timid and not lacked courage, but she was not as bold and brave and as bolshy as Anne, but
Yeah.
she was this. It was a tragedy that the world was deprived of these two young women and millions like them. But yeah, so I thought it was very well done. But yes, it wasn't as dark and as gloomy as you may think. Yeah, it was done with a lightness of touch that made it. It
because
made it
because life still happens
a
even though terrible things happen.
yeah. And even in the house, even in the annex, there's humour, there's joy, there's laughter. They bickered, and their life was going on, even within these four walls for 2 years.
All right. I need to ask you how many stars.
I would give it a 4 star,
Okay, four
definitely 4 star.
stars. 4 stars for a small light. But then again, quite frankly, I think anything that has Belle Powley in it, she's one
Yeah,
of those
she's
actresses who
amazing.
I trust, and I trust that if she's in it, it will not be rubbish.
Yeah.
That there will be
And Lee
something.
Schreiber as Otto Frank, he had the right touch of like this quiet humor. He was that quiet humor, that resilience, that compassion. Because after the war, many, probably thousands of young girls wrote to him, and he wrote back to many, many, many of them. And you can see that he became like a father to many, didn't he?
Yeah,
That compassion is there, even though he was like this strict, upright German of a man raised of his generation, that you can tell that that's there, but there's also that man who became like the father to many, who was
Yeah,
correspondent.
it's funny with Liev Schreiber. I mean, he's sort of like sneakily become one of the best actors on TV.
Yeah.
Because the first time I ever came across him was in Scream 2. I think that's the first thing I remember seeing
Yeah.
him in. And then Elizabeth just kind of like, hang on a second, Liev Schreiber, he's good.